Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Aska, where you, the audience, get to ask questions of someone you may not be able to interact with on a day-to-day basis. It's a safe space and a place where people can learn and grow, including myself and the other co-host. I'm one co-host, Big Irish Jay Hollingsworth.
And I'm Kev on stage, and we have a very special guest today, Mike Cummings, who was a crackhead at one point in his life.
That's correct.
How long were you a crackhead? No, just kidding. That's not how we just start.
Okay.
So Mike is a comic friend of Jay's, married, family, happily ever after. But at one point in time in his life, he was addicted to drugs.
Correct.
And we want to learn more about that part of your life. So how long would you say, just for clarify, me and Jay kind of asked some questions that we're interested in, and then we get to the questions the audience is interested in. But you said you were 41 off camera. How
42.
much of your 42. So how much of your life was
my drug career was from 13 technically till 22.
Dang.
Wow. So what drugs were you starting off
with
at 13?
some furlough in between, a little bit of jail time, a little bit of rehab, almost a year clean on the outside, but yeah.
Wow. So what kind of got you on that path?
My dad was an alcoholic, and I believe this creates a little, like, my brother and I aren't on speaking terms, and it has a little bit to do with my interpretation of our upbringing compared to his. But I believe my dad was a victim of this disease. I consider it a disease as well. So I think I got it. I had the whatever proclivity for it, and then situations in my life just kind of pushed me to that point where I was introduced to it, and then
What were the first drugs that you started using?
Well, being a little kid, beer, not hard alcohol, but like my dad would let my brother and I share beers at parties and stuff. But my brother didn't like beer back then, and I liked beer, so I would end up drinking the beers.
Yeah.
It's not like I got
from
drunk.
School, like,
No, like
That test had me.
He's watching the Braves game. Pass me a Coors Light.
Yeah, so there was that, and then my dad died, and so I didn't do anything for several years.
How old were you when your dad passed away?
10.
Dang, okay.
And my parents were divorced, and my brother and I lived with my dad. So it wasn't just traumatic. It was, and of course, your father dying is life-changing no matter what.
Right.
But our entire life changed. Our entire circumstance changed. Our entire wardrobe changed because we were living on a base, and they moved us in with my mom, who happened to be living off base.
Yeah.
And remarried and pregnant. And while we were there, someone broke into the storage facility and robbed us of all our.
Yeah. All
So all our
we try not to swear on this.
Oh, sorry. I forgot. He did say that. I'm gonna work. I'm a crackhead. What do you want? Jesus. So we got robbed, and so we had to. I mean, everything changed. The rules changed and everything. So it was a few years from that time, and then I just happened to smoke pot at a party. And
how old were you at that time?
13.
Oh, okay.
And that was it.
What's interesting is how this all came about is as Kev and I are finding guests and everything, we were like, oh, let's ask a felon. We were like, ask a felon, and I know Mike. He used to talk about in his act. He's like, I can't vote because I'm a felon. So I called him up.
I don't have to do jury duty either, though.
Say again?
I don't have to do jury.
Oh, yeah. And so I called him up, and he was like, yeah, but I was in. What do you like? I was in jail. I wasn't in prison.
You need a hard. I can answer a few questions about being a felon, but I wouldn't be able to be as broad and in depth as what you would hope.
Right.
And then he's like, but I could do ask a crackhead. I was like, excuse me, what?
So Jay called me like, Kev, do you want a crackhead? I was like, I mean, just in general? Yeah. For the show. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Which I knew that because Mike would talk on stage about, being in recovery and being sober. But I don't know if I knew that it was crack. I think I always just assumed alcohol. You think you told me?
That's weird that you say you don't remember when all the times that you asked me for crack.
Well, that was
and I kept having to tell you, Jay, I don't do that anymore.
What was those low riding jeans you were wearing?
Oh, okay.
Come on. All right, sorry. It's so dumb.
See, again, that's a jailhouse thing. I don't know what you're talking about. when I was in jail, they were high and tight.
Yeah, I
It's
bet.
like the military fame.
We did a lot of jogging, so we had to keep them. You tied your strings.
Now,
So
when you,
was-
oh,
go
sorry, I
ahead.
was going to say, because this is something I know about Mike's background. When you were 13,
I don't even think I need to be here for this. This is Ask Jay about Mike the Crackhead show.
I'm just clarifying things so we can set the stage. You grew up in Guam.
That's correct.
Were you 13 when you were in Guam?
yeah.
Okay.
I was 5 when we moved to Guam.
Okay. All right. So all this is taking place in Guam.
This started on Guam.
Okay.
This didn't end on Guam.
Okay.
This ended on the Columbia River in Wenatchee, Washington.
Okay. All right. That was all. I just wanted to clarify that.
So would
know.
you say you started with beer as a kid? Your parents kind of gave it
Yeah.
to you. Weed. at
Pot
13?
is a drug. Pot is what led me on the path.
That's what I was just gonna ask. Is it like
Now,
a gateway drug?
I was thinking about this earlier. That gateway drug thing is a little misleading, I believe.
Okay.
Now, people, when they think about drugs and drug addicts, they think that there's this linear line of you start with, beer, marijuana, and then you do, and everything just kind of progresses and progresses. You end up smoking crack, and then you end up dying of a heroin overdose.
Right.
That's not really how it works.
Okay.
Granted, most people don't end with pot. But I know a lot of people who their whole lives is just pot.
Smoke weed.
Just smoke weed and alcohol, and maybe it does affect their life, maybe it doesn't.
Right.
But
they don't necessarily move on to harder
yeah,
drugs.
and I've never done heroin.
Yeah.
And
Is
I don't.
heroin considered the strongest drug?
Well, heroin and crack are now crystal meth and the synthetic drugs, the prescribed drugs that are being abused now are harder than the heroin that people were doing, 20 years ago.
We had another guest who was a meth head, and she said the same thing. She was like, "You think meth is hard?
Yeah.
Prescription drugs are
They'll-
the hardest thing to
they're
kick, and
they're serious
yeah,
killers."
yeah,
And what happens is that people get hooked on those drugs now. Especially, this is how people are dying of heroin. Is people are getting hooked on these drugs, which I don't even know the names of.
yeah.
They're getting hooked on these drugs, and then they can't afford to keep doing these drugs. And heroin's just cheaper. It's not nearly as good as the stuff that they want to do, but it'll do the job.
So you
Crack, on the other hand, there's no pill that they make that will substitute for crack. Crack is the best drug. Period.
Whitney Houston said crack is whack. You disagree?
It's the
crack
Donald
is-
Trump of
crack
drugs.
is
It's the
so
best.
seriously whack, and I still miss it.
Really?
Really?
I'm gonna have 20 years in April if I make it, and which we always have to say if I make it, or if you're religious, God willing.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean,
By the
I
way,
assume I'm gonna
anything you
make
say
it 20
with that
years.
voice sounds dumb. Like I love my wife.
Yeah.
Good night, kids.
But I do love my wife.
But you said
So crack. All right. So when I did pot, right, and I snorted some coke
Yeah.
at some point, and I was in Hawaii actually when I did crack for the first time, and somebody bought some coke, and somebody else was like, "Let's cook it up," and I'd never done that before. And have either of you done cocaine?
No.
Okay,
I saw
cocaine
Narcos,
is pretty awesome. You snort it and you just you get really high and your heart thumps and stuff like that, but then immediately you have that drip in the nose and everything like kind of burns and stuff. Crack is it's like having a heart attack and not dying.
Wow.
That's what crack feels like.
That sounds awful.
It's
though.
like having a heart attack.
I was gonna say you
Plus
said,
something else I don't want to mention because you said this was kind of a clean show.
Well, we just don't.
It's
care.
like half heart attack, half orgasm.
Okay, that's
and you,
fine, yeah.
You almost die, but you don't die. And then you want to do it a little bit harder next time so that you come that much closer to dying, but not dying.
right.
And it's like
that sounds terrifying.
it's absolutely terrifying and exhilarating. And
Is it a thing where like you do it and
I'm
then you
smiling. I can't even believe I'm like telling about how crack you almost die, and I'm smiling about it. 'cause
You're
I'm
talking
just,
about it like kids.
I'm
like,
getting
when I
like
was a kid, I go to
nostalgic.
the ice cream truck.
nostalgic little tear.
Crack.
It's been too long.
But that's an interesting feeling to feel like most people when they talk about their past, it's like very dark and like I don't want to do that. I'm not that person anymore. So how is it like to stay clean knowing you have like a kind of an affinity or positive memories of it?
consequences.
Yeah.
That's what it is, Kevin. It has nothing to do with, I mean, sadly, there was a point where because I was in and out of the 12-step programs for a long time before I finally cleaned up. And there was one point where I had like 90 days. I was getting out of rehab. I had like 90 days. It was a 6-month rehab, and I got out with 90 days, which would show you how I treated the first half of rehab.
Right.
But as I was getting out, I went to this meeting, and I was sharing that I wish that I wasn't a drug addict, because then I could do all the drugs I wanted to, and it wouldn't affect my life. And everybody laughed at that.
Right.
And it didn't make. Why were they laughing? Because that's how I really feel. But that's the problem. It's not. It's not like I don't miss getting high.
Right.
Of course I miss getting high. That's why I did it for so long when it stopped working. Drugs were a solution to my problems for a long time. The loneliness, the feeling, less than everybody, or whatever was going on in my life that I wanted to escape from, drugs was the perfect escape. And it worked for a long time until it didn't work. And then it didn't work for a hard time.
Yeah. No, were you 13 the first time you tried crack?
No. I was 19.
19. Okay.
Yeah, I only I was a straight up crackhead for 3 years.
Okay, but no. So I'm just trying to get to where so you grew up in Guam, 13. You're smoking weed. Yeah. Drinking. You're in Hawaii. How did that?
Well, I ended up in Hawaii because of my behavior on Guam. Beating people up, stealing cars, and Guam is a tiny place.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of white people in Guam that aren't in uniform.
Right.
So, and I was doing a lot of stuff having to do with tourists. Like I would
rob tourists.
Yeah, but it wasn't. It's not like you think. Huh. Because I was, I was like a young surfer, good-looking white kid in a land full of Guamanians and Filipinos who were all chasing the same Japanese girls that were coming off of these planes on vacation. So basically, if a Japanese girl wanted white meat, this is it right here. So I had my pick of the,
one guy on Guam.
I was running through stuff out there, and almost immediately I had friends that were like, Mike, why are you paying for dinner? Why are you doing? These girls have money. You don't need to be buying stuff for them. You don't need to be paying for dinner. Right. Let them pay for dinner. Let them buy you stuff. And then next thing you know, I'm like, how it just gets more and more until I'm sleeping with a girl. She goes to I have sex with a girl. She goes to sleep, and I'm digging in her purse and sneaking out.
Got it.
And then that's why I'm spending all that money on drugs. And the first time a buddy of mine and I stole a car was just a couple girls. We were with a couple girls. We're going to take them on a tour of the island or whatever, and we stop at some store. They both go inside, and they left all their stuff and the keys. And we're like, what are we doing? Let's just go. And so we took the car. We went through all their stuff, took what we thought was valuable, and then we trashed the car. And then we had so much fun doing it that we did it a couple more times. And then, my buddy was like, another friend of mine whose uncle was a cop said, hey, Mike, they're coming for you.
Right.
He said, they know who you are. You're caught. You just aren't caught yet.
Right.
So right around that time, I got in this really bad fight outside of a club, and they put a guy in the hospital, and he was talking about pressing charges and suing me, and so it was just time to go. And then I ended up in Hawaii, and then the guy that I moved out there with, he was friends with a bunch of crackheads, and so.
How old were you when you moved to Hawaii?
19.
It was you. Okay, yeah. So you move out there at 19 and
immediately did crack. And immediately went to jail.
So the thing I've heard about crack, and you wonder if you can attest to this or not, is like the first time you get high on crack, you're like instantly addicted. Was that the case for you?
Boy, it happened like that for me.
Yeah.
But I don't see it as like a physical, it's not like a physical thing where but it is the best drug. If if you're into crack, it'll be the best drug you ever do. Like I've done crystal meth, and crystal meth is crazy, but it doesn't feel as good as crack.
Yeah.
So, that's why crack. You're only high for minutes.
Really?
You're only legitimately high for minutes. Granted, it can be a slow decline back to where you need to smoke more, but when you have crack, you do the crack until it's gone. No matter how much crack you have, you do it till it's gone. That's it.
Yeah.
So you're just constantly.
And when you're doing it, are you chasing that high of the first 2 minutes?
Absolutely, and that's the same with any drug.
Yeah.
With any drug, it's the first time you got high, that feeling, you want to do it again. Same with, I don't know, sex, I assume.
Yeah.
So that first time you did it, as you're doing it, or like right after you did it, are you immediately just like, oh, I'm in trouble here?
Well, I already knew that I was an addict.
Okay.
Because I had already been to rehab.
Yeah.
So, twice actually. So by the time I smoked crack, I already knew that this was bad news, and I also since I already knew I was a drug addict, I was like, well, I found it. I found my drug. This is who I want to be when I grow up. And so it was amazing.
What were some of the like worst moments that you had during your time?
Crimes.
Yeah.
Crimes.
Crimes.
So, I don't want to go into too much detail, but there was a time where I was clean for almost a year, and I was going to 12-step meetings, which I can tell you now, it saved my life.
Right.
Even in the time when I was coming in and out, it still saved my life because I never got so far away from the 12-step groups that I was always lucky that I made it back into the rooms.
Yeah.
Which that's what we always say is keep coming back. No matter what. I mean, we want you to come back clean, but even if you're not clean, just make it back to the rooms and you have a chance.
Right.
If you don't make it back, if you're out there, there's no way of you having a chance. If the 12-step groups are because I don't believe that NA and AA and OA and all these, I don't believe that 12 steps is the only way that a person can get clean.
Yeah.
I've seen many people get clean through church or yoga, whatever. But for me, I tried a bunch of stuff that never worked. And the only thing that's ever worked for me is the 12 steps. And even when it wasn't working, I still knew that if I ever got my stuff together, that's the only place I was going to be able to do it. So I was clean for almost a year, and I was 21. And I just turned 21, and I was just feeling like great. And I met this girl who wanted to go to some party, and I was just feeling like, man, I really missed out on being like a normal kid because I never had like a teenage life.
Right.
Because I was between the drugs and the rehab and the running away and getting kicked out and working full time and getting kicked out of schools and moving around just through my own behavior. I never got to just be a kid.
Yeah.
So this, I meet this girl and she wants to go to this party. She has no idea what a screw up I am. We got buzzed. I did acid for the first time that night. That was so much fun. And then, I got too. Of course, I got too because I hadn't drank in a while. I got too drunk to do whatever this girl wanted to do, and so that didn't happen. And the next day, I did meth, I did crack, and I robbed somebody. And like that robbery was a straight up, like the worst crime I've ever done. I mean, I hurt somebody.
Yeah.
And that night, like even now when I think about it, that's the night that, for whatever else goes on in my life, because of that night, I owe. However long I stay clean, however long I think I've done my penance or whatever.
Right.
I will never, I mean, I did not kill somebody.
Right.
But inches.
Man.
Dang.
So, and it was all over. Just, I got to get high. And I hadn't done it in a year almost.
Was that the turning point for you?
Yes and no. It was a turning point. Like the last, because that was 21. I just turned 21. And it was another 18 months before I finally got totally clean. But it was, those last 18 months were just dredging the bottom, just horrible, miserable, constantly suicidal, just doing drugs to stay whatever. Like I disappeared as a person.
Now, as you're trying to get clean on these various times, what are the withdrawals like?
That part is, crack is not fun, but
you said it was fun.
As far as coming down from crack is not fun.
The ride up is great.
The first time I ever got detox from crack was in jail, and I'm sitting in jail, and I thought that they were putting stuff in my food because I couldn't keep anything down. I had vomit, diarrhea, just horrible, sweating, cold sweats and stuff like that. And I thought they were poisoning me.
Right.
And
it was your body not
it was just detoxing. And heroin, I mean, people die from detoxing from alcohol, and people who detox from heroin, it feels like you're going to die. Crack, I mean, I can only attest to, getting clean off of crack and booze, and it's no picnic, but I was lucky that I was in a restricted, I had no choice.
Yeah. How hard was it to finally get clean?
For years, like the first couple times I got clean in programs, I would get clean and then I would, I'd stay clean for like 3 months and I'd get loaded and I'd be loaded for 3 months. And the next thing you know, I'd stay clean for 60 days and I'd be loaded for 6 months. And then, so every time I came back, I was staying for shorter amounts of time and staying out for longer amounts of time.
Right.
And that last time was almost 2 years. And it was, I honestly believe that if I hadn't gotten clean this time, I would have died. If I'd gotten clean and then gone right back, if I'd gone back out like my pattern had been, the last thing would have been me dying, because I was standing on a bridge at one point, in the winter, and just looking down. There's a bridge in Wenatchee where if people have gone over this bridge, whether suicide or accidents, people have gone over this bridge in the wintertime, and first of all, they don't find your body for a while because you get sucked down into the Columbia. The water's really crazy, and you get washed miles downriver.
Yeah.
And who knows? You get snagged under a tree or whatever.
Right.
It could be 3 months before they even find you. And my relationship with my family at that point and just my lifestyle was so whatever that if I'd gone in the river and I'm standing there, I'm looking at the river, it'd been a year before they found out I was dead.
Good grief.
Because
did your family know where you were?
They didn't even know where I was.
They know you're in Washington?
They didn't know I was in Washington at this point.
One thing I was going to ask you. Say
as far as I know.
Your father passed away when you were 10, and your mom, how was your relationship with your mom? And at any point, did she disown you, or did you kind of disown yourself from the family?
No. I'm as a drug addict, you use whatever you can to get your drugs. And the easiest people to steal from, the easiest people to take advantage of are the people that care about you. So those are the people we hurt the most, because they're the people that are going to fall for the same stuff over and over again. And even when they're not falling for it anymore, they got their own issues. I mean, my mom had her own guilt for me being who I was, probably blaming herself a little bit. And, I only blame her on my birthday when I think it's going to get me more. But in the end, it wasn't her fault.
Right.
But the best thing she ever did for me was to kick me out and say, you can't live here anymore. You can't come here unannounced. We're changing the locks. If we see you coming and you didn't call and ask permission, we're calling the cops.
You said this was good for you?
It was and again, that was 18. It was still almost 4 years. Well, yeah, it was practically 4 years before I finally got clean. But if they had let me abuse them and drag, I feel like recovery is, or drug addiction, it's like stretching a rubber band, you know? And if you don't stop the person from stretching soon enough, they're going to snap. And that's when they die, or they spend the rest of their life in prison or whatever.
Right.
You gotta shoot that rubber band at some point. But them cutting me loose forced me, the tension, like, it's hard. I don't know. It's hard to explain. But if they hadn't cut me off, then I would have stayed in whatever state that was of my addiction for longer, which would have affected how long I stayed in the next state. How long, every day that you're getting loaded, especially a crackhead like me, I'm putting my life in danger. I'm putting other people's lives in danger. So the longer I'm out there, the better chance somebody's going to die.
Right. So would you say, what would you say, or I guess you said you were 18 and that helped you, but it took a long time for you to
which was
get
horrible
clean.
for them.
Yeah.
Because they cut me off, and you would think, okay, I cut him off, I cut him loose, he's going to be hurting, he'll come crawling back. And instead, I was like, screw you, I'm going off on my own. And then I just disappeared for years.
So what would you say to people whose children or family members are struggling with drug addiction? Like, what's the best way for family to help them?
Both sides of it. The person.
Yeah. So The thing about, like, let's say you have a kid that's a drug addict. I got to honestly say, you can't cut them off too soon.
What do you mean?
Well, like, you can't cut them loose too soon. You can wait too long to cut them loose.
Yeah.
So, if you've had enough and it's time to let go, I got to imagine it's one of the hardest things my mom ever had to do. Right. To tell her son, you got to go. And I don't want to hear from you, until you get your stuff together. And knowing that she may never hear from me again, which I tried to do to her. Yeah. So it's.
Were you angry at her in any way?
Oh, hell yeah. And I blamed her. I blamed everybody but myself for years. And that was a big part of why I couldn't get clean. Because, I knew I was a drug addict, but I also knew it wasn't my fault. My dad died. My parents were divorced. My mom didn't love me enough. The kids at school were beating on me all the time and all this crap, whatever it was.
Did that make it easier to deal with, this is...
Yeah, and...
they deserve this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I deserve this.
Yeah. So would you say that when you got clean, was it turning your, like a mindset shift, or like accepting your role in
yes and no. What happened? The actual incident of me getting clean. I was living in a crack house at the time.
That's really I thought that was like a movie thing.
So
is it a group of crackheads?
There
living
are
together?
straight up movie crack houses.
Yeah,
I mean, there are places where it's just a flop house where people. I lived in a house with a guy and his poor kid, who I'm sure is a crackhead now, and this guy, I paid him a small amount of rent, and we pooled our resources so that there was always crack. And his brother lived next door, and he, we just, the more money you have, the more crack you can buy. So it was, how they have like those co-ops,
yeah,
like REI and Whole Foods. We were a crack co-op, so we were like a team, and we just happened to live in the same house. And so I'm living in this crack house, because a crack house is anywhere where there's people smoking crack all the time.
Yeah,
and there's always people smoking crack in this house. So, so I'm living in this crack house, and one day I was just and I was in and out of, at this point, my respect for the 12-step meetings had reached such a low that I would go to meetings high. I would go to meetings and then go get high or whatever. Right. I would only go there because I had nothing else to do and no one wanted to hang out with me. And even the people I drank with didn't want to hang out with me because I was such a disaster. But 12-step meetings, like it's in the traditions, they can't turn you away.
Yeah.
No matter how unless you're actually creating a dangerous situation for people.
Yeah.
They're stuck with you.
Yeah.
And not everybody feels that way. Some people literally just want you to be there no matter what you're going through.
We've talked about your relationship with your mom. Are you guys good now?
My mother and I have a fantastic relationship today.
Oh, that's great.
And she's one of my favorite people in the world. And it's not to say that we don't have arguments and stuff like this. It's not like we have this super easy relationship. We have like a regular mother-son relationship, I haven't reached my potential. I haven't done enough in life for her and all this kind of stuff. But that's
mom.
That's mom.
Yeah.
I have a mom today instead of this poor woman who, I was more of
son back.
Yeah, I was more of an affliction on the family.
How's your and your brother's relationship?
My brother and I have no relationship. And it's compounded by the stuff that he's going through in his life. I had this disease really early. I believe he has this disease. And I don't even know if that has anything to do with our relationship because it was crap for the 10 or 15 years before that I didn't know anything about. He and I we're just two people going through the same thing that just probably don't ever need to see each other again.
Mm. And when you now that you're clean, you've been clean 20 years. Almost 20 years, March. Congrats, by
April.
the way. That's April. Congrats.
Clap, Jay. Dang, bro.
You don't have to clap.
He'll get there. No. Has there been any long-term effects on your body from doing crack or mentally or anything?
Well, I'm certainly not as smart as I used to be.
Seriously, you're
no.
not.
I mean, I
funny.
literally in high school, my senior year of high school, I had a few less than 50% attendance with a 3.5 grade point average.
Dang.
because I would literally just go in and just
Kill it.
just screw them over completely on tests. I would take a test and just ace the test, and they wouldn't see me. And like when I was graduating, the principal pulled me into the office, and she said, "Look, you shouldn't. You're not supposed to graduate. You know, everything's incomplete. You got no attendance, nothing. This grade point average is a joke. Some of your teachers don't even know your name. They're like, the only reason I'm giving you a diploma is because I never want to see you again.
Wow.
So take your diploma, get off my campus, do not come back." Because
Did they let you go to graduation?
She said if you do anything stupid, you're done.
Right.
I'll pull it and I'll make you go. You know, I'll suffer through.
She's
you
just like, I
again.
just
don't
can't
care.
see you next year.
She's like, I just, whatever. All your potential and all this crap. Like now, I'm not nearly as smart.
And now that's interesting. You say that. Is that something that
I'm still smarter than some, but
yeah, that's not saying much. So is that something though that's like a conscious thing you recognize? Like maybe you're working on something or you can't remember something, and you're like, dang, it's. I mean, not to be funny, but you're like, dang, it's the crack. like I can't remember. Or
No,
I mean, is it like a conscious thing though that as you're trying to do stuff?
no.
Okay.
I mean, I'm still pretty smart.
Okay.
But I also know that, I'm 42 years old and I'm still waiting tables. I mean, I did comedy for 10 years, but there's a lot of things I could be doing with my life that, I have like ADD and I have anxiety disorder and I have, I'm clinically depressed. I've been off and on medications over the last 20 years, and it's hard to be a recovering addict and trying to negotiate prescription medication.
Yeah.
So, because there's stigma in certain, and not specifically in the fellowship itself. Like it's not, there's, as far as I know, there's not traditions that there's no rules against taking medication
Right.
in say AA or NA, but you can be treated differently. There's a lot of people that believe that if you're not clean, if you're not totally clean, you're not clean, which I think is crap. That's none of your business.
Right.
That's for me and my doctor to decide, or you and your doctor. I have no place to tell you that you're an active addict if I mean, I had a sponsee once who
That's the term, sponsee?
Sponsee, yeah,
Okay.
mentoring people, sponsee, and this kid, he was trying to get his marijuana card for some reason, and I just said to someone, I was like, look, I'm not judging you and saying that it's not okay for you to smoke pot in recovery, but I don't smoke pot.
Yeah.
So I can't be your sponsor. You need to find somebody who can navigate this with you. I don't have any experience with this.
Right.
It's it's a very, addiction is like, we have these universal things that make us addicts and alcoholics, that we can relate to each other and that we can keep each other straight, but it's still a very individual journey that you're taking.
Yeah.
And there's no set rules that say granted, if I'm a crackhead and I smoke crack, that's it. If I smoke pot, that's it, because that's a drug that I've done addictively. If I drink at all, that's it. There's certain things that make it really easy.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say like your daily routine was like during those years?
The crackhead years?
Yeah.
Oh man. So
It's a memoir.
New TV show. The Wonder Years, followed by the Crackhead Years.
Now, when I was living in Guam, those were the golden years. And granted, I was just doing cocaine and weed and drinking. When I was smoking crack, I never heard of a good crackhead.
Right.
Crackheads aren't usually successful.
Right.
Which is why we, when people, it's like, alcoholics have this like 30-year decline. That's why at AA meetings, some of these guys are like 50 before they sober up. And you're like, how the hell did you make it 30 years
Right.
in this disease? Because a crackhead hits it and it's like falling off a cliff.
Yeah.
It's a race to the bottom. So I've never known anybody that was good at being a crackhead, but basically you just wake up in the morning, you pull the pipe out and you realize I ain't got nothing. Time to hit the dirt. And my only skill back then was conning women, or I would sell fake weed and maybe mug a guy, but that was more difficult because you have to do that in broad daylight. And you gotta like the way you do that is in Hawaii specifically. There's been a lot of weed sellers in Waikiki for a long time, and what you do is you pull a guy and you say, hey, you want weed? Well, okay, but we got to go over here. We got to go to this corner because people are watching.
Yeah, don't want to
there's
be out in
cops
public.
around. And he's going to come in there even though he knows I shouldn't be going into an alley
Right.
with this guy.
Right.
I would
know
never
this
go in the
guy.
alley with this
Yeah.
guy, but I'm doing something illegal. This is his turf. He knows the rules. He doesn't want to go to jail either. So you get him in the alley. And then you get up close to him and you tell him, actually, there's no weed. You're just going to give me some money. And like, you never even hardly ever have to hurt somebody because they immediately realize that they put themselves in this
Right.
position.
Right.
And not only is the fear of being hurt, but there's the shame of being like, I know better than this.
Right.
What am I doing
So how do
here?
you? I'm like,
And then you just get up close. You know, you get so close
That's what I
to
was
them
gonna
that
ask
you
you.
give them no escape.
and what and
Like,
and
back
it's,
then I was a
it's
crackhead. I didn't weigh that much.
change of energy. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
it's a change of energy. You go from this guy trying to do you a
Hey
favor.
man, you want some weed?
You go, I'm trying to help you out here. But we got to do it over here. And then you're like, this is not going to end well. Just give it up.
And did you ever have anybody that pushed back?
I mean, no.
No.
But I mean, I had to push guys around a couple times. I don't think I ever even like straight up punch somebody. I just, you just press them and you push them and you grab them and you shake them and like, this is it. You're not getting out of here until I get what I want.
No, you've mentioned the 12-step program, and I know. Well, actually, I don't know. But isn't some of that like there is some like religious undertones with that? That's one of the questions. Is are you a religious person? Spiritual?
I'm an atheist.
Okay.
Which is rare in 12-step programs. Without getting specific into which programs, because I believe in trying to hold even with like now with social media and all that stuff, it's almost impossible to maintain your anonymity.
Yeah.
Anonymity, and especially if you're trying to do something like this and talk about it publicly without getting specifically into what program you belong to, or whatever.
Right.
But the literature of my experience is only with Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous. The literature specifically in Alcoholics Anonymous is riddled with not just spiritual, religious undertones, Christian.
Yeah.
Scriptures and stuff.
No,
Oh,
not scriptures,
but it's
but things like you belief in a higher power of not higher power, but of God as you understand Him, capital H, stuff like that. Like they don't say this is Jesus Christ and the Trinity, but they say everything. But it is
Right.
it is absolutely it was created by people who were Christian.
Yeah.
And even it's almost like being an agnostic or an atheist. The way I felt in the beginning was, oh, that's so sweet. You'll figure it out. Don't worry. You stay long enough, God will find you.
oh, okay.
And it was one of the things that I used as an excuse to stay out for a long time, and one of the things that I tried to use to make it so I wouldn't come back. My home group now is an agnostic meeting, and it's almost, other than being on the schedule as a 12-step meeting, it's almost unrecognizable as a 12-step meeting because we've avoided all that stuff in the meeting. It's a fellowship of recovering people who aren't necessarily all even atheists. We have believers in our group that just really enjoy the community and enjoy the energy at our meeting. And it saved me when I moved to LA because I came here with time, and I thought, I've been here 6 years, and I thought that I would find, so much 12-step in Los Angeles. I knew that I would find somewhere that I felt, it just was impossible for me to not find groups that weren't just so hardcore and whatever. Some people need that.
Right.
But that was the opposite of what it was. Not only was it not what I needed, but it was going to take me out.
Yeah.
So I had to find
And it gave you an excuse to not go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Which, whether or not I get loaded, stepping away from 12 steps is going to ruin my life.
Really?
Because I am one of the believers that getting loaded is the last step of my relapse.
So
everything else is already falling apart. Me taking that drug or drinking or whatever is just the one last thing I do to make it official.
That's interesting.
So if I don't go to meetings for a while, I start to get sick in the head. I'm my own worst enemy. So if I'm left alone,
yeah.
What's the longest you go without going to a meeting before you start getting?
I think the longest I've ever been is probably 6 months.
Really?
And that was rough.
Oh, okay.
That was a rough time. And that wasn't even here in LA. That was back in Seattle.
Ah.
You know, and that had to do with comedy and just,
Yeah.
you know, it like reached a point where I was doing a lot of road work and I'd go to these small towns and I always try to find meetings, and I had a lot of fun going to meetings in these crappy little towns in Idaho and Montana. There's some sick people out there. And, in
Montana specifically, in
Lucas
Idaho
Seeley.
specifically.
And, but, you know, sometimes I'd go and I couldn't find meetings because they were closed down. And, you know, like some of these small towns, they just don't have the infrastructure to maintain a real organic fellowship. And so, you know, there's not as much active recovery.
Yeah.
And so sometimes a meeting will close and it's still on the schedule or whatever. And,
Wow.
and then, you know, you miss out. And then since I don't live there, I don't know how to find another meeting.
Right.
Would you say being a sponsor to other people now helps you?
Well, I don't
stay sober?
sponsor right now.
Oh, you don't?
I haven't sponsored anybody in a while. That's not to,
Oh.
I mean, every time I'm at a meeting where they ask for available sponsors, I raise my hand. But I haven't had anybody ask me to be a sponsor in a while. And the last several sponsors I've had have just kind of faded away, which is normal anyway.
Yeah.
But I also don't, you know, I mean, I've stepped back from the fellowship as far as I don't do as much service as I used to do. You know? I mean, I used to secretary meetings, I used to be a literature person, and I do H&I work, which is hospitals and institutions. And, you know, nowadays I just kind of do my own thing. I got my wife and I got my own life, you know. And that's not to say that when I'm not, the closer you are to the middle in recovery, the better you feel, the warmer you feel, the slower things move. You know, it's just like physics. Like
Right.
The farther you are out on the edge, the faster things moving, and the more that pull to get sucked out feels.
Yeah.
That centrifugal force. So in 12-step recovery, it's the same thing. If you're stuck to the people in the middle, you're just spinning around in this cute little circle.
Yeah.
When you're out on the edge, you're flying around on the edge. And I'm kind of right in the middle somewhere where I got my rhythm. And I would love to feel motivated to do more, but I haven't in a while.
Do you, when you were doing crack, did you ever get bad crack? And what is that feeling versus, regular?
Well, I mean, obviously, so crack, you cook everything out. That's the thing about crack. You're cooking all the crap out. So somebody gives you cocaine that's cut with a bunch of stuff that makes it crappy cocaine. Crack, you cook it out. You're cooking it down to the purest form. And when you smoke that rock, you're smoking crack.
Okay.
You know, that's the best.
What crack for the novice?
Us.
Crack, I know it's like a rock of cocaine.
Yeah,
is it like cocaine and baking soda?
Well, see, the baking soda is what you use to cook out all that other useless crap. You know,
okay.
all the cutting agents. That's what you're doing. You're cooking it on and you're cooking it down so that you have a rock that you can smoke.
And you smoke that rock by doing what?
I mean, the best way is to just put in a little glass pipe and heat it up, and you know.
Oh, and then this vapor.
Yeah, I mean, basically, just the only thing you want to do is you want to get it to break down into smoke without sucking the actual rock down your throat.
Got it.
So whatever device.
Did you ever do that?
No.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, but you gotta be careful.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, special people smoking out of Coke cans and stuff like that, which is really dangerous. I mean, that's how we get holes in our brains.
Yeah.
You know, from smoking stuff out of cans, and you got all that aluminum and whatever treatment stuff. So you know, that's not good. That's why most crackheads use glass pipes because it's safer.
So could you point to a moment that you could say this thing made me stop?
Yeah. So I was starting to get into when I was living in that crack house, going to meetings off and on, and not really just not even paying attention, just going because I had nothing else to do. I got really sick one day for like 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And so sick that I couldn't swallow.
Okay.
So I couldn't smoke crack. I couldn't smoke cigarettes. I couldn't even really eat. I don't even know what it was. I think it was half crack, half flu, whatever. And so I had a few days just because I physically couldn't do drugs.
Right.
And you'd be amazed at how I'm lucky. When I clean up, it's like it literally is just night and day. You give me a couple days clean, and I immediately the world starts to make sense again.
Yeah.
And it I turn around fast. You know, which the longer you if you're out long, you know, that can be harder too, or the turnover isn't so quick or whatever. You're not feeling better right away. But I've been lucky that when I'm loaded, I'm a mess. When I clean up, it takes me no time, and I'm boom, back at the gym, feeling good, going to work. Let's get a job. All right, whatever. Yeah. Life's good. So I just felt better. And I woke up one day, and I'd been going to a couple meetings for a couple days because I got nothing to do. And I just woke up one day, and I was like, I wanted to smoke crack so bad. And I had it. I had some because I just hadn't had any opportunity to smoke it. I'm sitting there. I got this crack in my hand, and I'm looking at it. I'm going, I want to do it so bad. And there's all these cliches in 12 steps, and there's one that I've heard 100,000 times, and it's you never have to get loaded again, even if you want to. And one of the biggest issues that I have in my life, even outside of drugs, is instant gratification, learning to say no to myself, and if I want it now, I'm going to do it now, and that's how I've always been with drugs and whatever. And no matter what, like every time I would get clean, I'd get clean for a while, and then as soon as I wanted to do drugs, I just did it.
Yeah.
So I only stayed clean until I didn't want to do it anymore, and I didn't want to stay clean. I wanted to get loaded, but I'm looking at this crack in my hand. I'm just thinking, I don't have to do it. I could stay clean today, and I put it away, and I put like a week together before I finally threw that stuff out. But one day I just realized I don't have to do this anymore. And then on day 2 I felt like I didn't deserve to have to do maybe I felt a little better about myself, and it just kind of snowballed from there. I mean, granted, I did steps, and I did a lot of writing, and I had a sponsor that I was calling every day, and there's things that you're supposed to do that I had kind of half-assed done before that now I was really doing, but I really don't know what it is, except for I finally had that opportunity to hear it, to really hear it and feel it.
And you mentioned that you had gone like 4 days without eating, 3 or 4 days.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Well, what I was going to ask you with that is like the stereotypes of a crackhead, like, and I don't even know if I'd probably be messing up some, like meth is like you're scratching a lot, right? And is that
crack too. I mean, crackheads.
And were you like that? Were you, did you have all the tweaker?
Oh my God. I mean, I was doing crystal meth too towards the end, like for the last year and stuff, but crack was my, I would do meth, but that's what I wanted. I just want to smoke crack, whatever. Yeah. But yeah, like I'd literally, and I thought I was going to miss out if I wasn't high, but I would literally just get high and then play solitary for 8 hours.
Oh my God.
Just sit there by myself in, a room full of people doing their own tweaker crack shit. I mean, crackheads and tweakers don't act all that differently.
Gotcha.
In my experience. The people I hung out with, granted, like tweakers, you get high and then you just go off and you do these crimes and stuff. Crackheads, we do the crimes and we get our drugs, and we don't want to do the crimes again until we need to get drugs again.
Right.
I just want to sit here and do my crack.
And play solitaire for 8 hours.
I mean, I don't know a lot of crackheads that are like doing some crack and then saying, let's go on a road trip. Like tweakers are like, let's do some crack and go fix a lawnmower at 3 a.m. Crackheads are like, how about I finish my crack and then I'll go fix a lawnmower for you.
Do we need to take a break? Okay, all right. Just
do you we asked this to another one of our guests who was white. Do you think being white had any effect on your relationship with law enforcement during this time?
All right. When I moved from Hawaii to Washington, I did not move with permission.
Okay.
When I left Hawaii, I was on probation.
Yeah.
But I had just gotten loaded.
Right.
And one of the reasons I almost had a year was because as soon as I got out of jail, I started smoking crack again.
Yeah.
And I pissed like 4 dirty UAs or something like that. And my probation officer said, look, you give me one more dirty UA, you're going to give me the 5 years that you owe us.
Wow.
And so I was like, okay, I got to do it now.
And UA is urine analysis, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I clean up and I go there. And then when I got loaded, I was so scared, right? And, so I knew I had to get out of town.
Right.
And so my buddy and I, now there's another drug on Hawaii called ice. Oh, yeah. Which is even different. It's like different from crystal meth and crack. It's its own thing. And so I'd smoked ice and I'm doing all this stuff, right? And I had this crack. So we're flying. We're going to go from Hawaii to Seattle. and I bought just enough crack, I thought, to make it to the flight, and I deal with it when I got to the other side. But for whatever reason, because of these other drugs I was doing, I was smoking all this ice too, I still had crack when it was time to leave. Crackheads don't throw away crack.
Yeah.
So I decided I'm taking this crack with me.
On a plane?
On the plane.
On a plane.
Oh, snap.
And let me tell you something. I look like a crackhead. So I'm this raggedy ass white guy. Now, granted, it's everything fell into like perfect place for me to get away with this because granted, we were leaving Hawaii, which is full of like dirty hippies anyway. People
Right.
go to Hawaii on surf trips, so I wasn't the first dirty white guy
Yeah.
to be going through airport security.
Yes.
So so they might not have thought of anything. But I had on like tight pants. And I had a crack pipe in my pocket.
What
You
the
could like
heck?
literally see the bulb. If you were paying attention, you could see the bulb
And
of
this
the
is
crack pipe.
20 years ago?
This is pre 9/11.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Like this is 97 or 96. 97. So this is 97. And but I'm going through airport security with crack in my pocket.
Crack
and
pocket
and
and a crack pipe.
Crack, everything, whatever. And no luggage because I didn't have nothing. So I got a backpack with like a t-shirt, a pair of shoes, and that's it, right? So I look like a guy getting on a Greyhound bus, but I'm flying from Hawaii to Seattle, and nobody stopped me. We went through like 3 different checkpoints. I didn't even this was the first time I ever even realized there were so many checkpoints in an airport. I'm like, how are there so many checkpoints?
Oh, my God.
And no one said nothing, and I'm high. And then so we're on the plane, and I'm like sitting on the plane. This Hawaii is like a 6 or 7 hour flight.
Yes.
It's not a short
It's
flight.
a doozy.
And I'm coming down, because I had to get high to get in the mindset to take my drugs. So I was high going through, and then I'm on the plane. I'm coming down. I'm like, what? I don't want to come down. So I went into the bathroom and I smoked crack on the airplane.
Out of your mind?
I smoked
Yes, he
crack
was on crack.
the airplane. And I mean,
You weren't even supposed to smoke on airplanes then.
you weren't supposed to smoke anything on airplanes. I smoked crack on the airplane like 3 different times. I was at, how you're in a bar and people are doing drugs and they're going back and forth to the bathroom. And you're like, man, those people are getting high in the bathroom. I was doing that on the airplane, walking past the same people, making the poor bastard in the aisle. I have to get up every time I would
You
go
didn't even
smoke
have
crack.
the aisle seat?
I didn't have the aisle
That's the
seat.
rudest thing of all.
Sitting in the
Do
middle.
the crack if you
And
must.
I'm like, dude,
But if you're going to sit in the window, then sit down, man.
dude, I gotta go pee again. He's like, what? Come on, man.
Oh,
So I'm just in and out. And finally I finished, right? I smoked all my crack on the airplane, like halfway over the Pacific. And
I can't even.
I stuffed my crack pipe into the little thing for some airport.
I can't even fly
person to
without
find later.
buckling my seatbelt. And you were like, I'll be smoking crack.
I had a great time.
That's the Mile High Club.
yeah. Oh, God.
I mean, and even like in Washington, there's no tourists in Wenatchee, Washington. So when I was doing my drugs in Wenatchee, it was like really slow, pathetic. Like I was working a shitty job, washing dishes, and basically I would get paid, and then I would give my check to my drug dealer, and I would I would run drugs. Like, take this to somebody and you can have some, and like, stupid shit like that. Just transporting stuff locally or just going along with people on these petty drug deals and then giving me drugs for, just being there and looking like a crazy asshole. And, but like I would, fighting at bars all the time and stuff, cops would see me and just drive me home. One time I punched a cop out in a
White people, y'all get to do everything.
parking lot.
Police. I mean,
this guy was an off-duty
sheriff. I remember this.
I've told you this story.
Yeah.
This guy was an off-duty sheriff's deputy from another county, and he was in Wenatchee for a wedding. And me and some friends were going from the bar. We're gonna go pick up some alcohol, and we were going back to my house. And these people weren't crackheads; they just happened to be hanging out with a crackhead.
right.
And we were driving through this abandoned bowling alley that had burned down. This empty lot, and I hear like the music really loud, and I'm in the back of this car, and I hear this yell, somebody yell something, and the car stops, and I could see the guy's face as they went by, these 3 guys. I just knew they were looking for shit, right?
Right.
And I'm looking for shit.
stuff.
So let's fight.
Yeah. I know.
Oh, sorry. And so I immediately just get out, right?
Yeah.
The car's not even stopped yet. I'm out of the car, and I just walked up to him. And this guy was carrying like a couple cases of beer. And I said, hey, we're going to a party. Do you guys want to fight before we go to this party? And because I just knew they said something, or else why would we stop? And he goes, yeah. And he puts his stuff down. And he walks towards me. And before he even got close, I punched him. And it was like,
y'all crazy, bro.
I'm not a great fighter, but I cleaned this guy's clock. He was reaching out to grab me, I think, because his hand was
He was
out.
in a hockey fight,
and that's
and you
why,
weren't.
That's why I punched him, because he reached out for me. And
He's like, maybe let me lay hands on you.
whatever he did was the wrong thing, because I knocked him unconscious. His arm was still straight out when he hit the ground. It was like boom, head hit the
did
ground,
the Frankenstein.
arm goes flat.
That's a different symbol when you guys do it.
I was as surprised as anybody that I knocked this guy out.
Like,
I'm like, oh my God. And I'm looking at him and I'm looking at his friends and I look at him and they're looking at me like, what just happened? And I go, you want some? Right? Like, like I'm going to do it again or something. They're like, no, we don't want, they were like immediately like, I don't think we wanted this in the first place. I don't know what he was thinking. So we just go and we go have this party. And then later on that night, we're going to another party and we're peeing on peeing. Is that?
You can fine. Yeah.
We're peeing on somebody's bush outside, whatever, and they called the cops because people were peeing on their bushes. And these cops come by, and they're like, yeah, somebody called, said, somebody's peeing on their bushes, but you fit the description of a hit and run that happened earlier. We're like, what? And they're like, yeah, so-and-so hit and run with a car and whatever, you. And they pick me. And do you remember that movie, The Replacements?
Yeah.
Remember when they're doing the onside kick, and he's like, who's my... and he's scanning, and I think it was, who's the actor that he had like his first tiny little part, but he's like a comedian and decent actor. Anyway, he's the most scared looking guy. Yeah. So the cops pick me because they know it's me. Right. Because I got, I still got like scratches and stuff on my hand. Yeah. And they pick this big dumb oaf, right? And they throw us in the back of this car, and they say, we got a witness. He's going to come and see if you're the guys. We're going to his hotel, and we're driving to the hotel, and he's like, he's ready to cry in the back seat. And I'm like, he's this big, dumb guy. He looks tough, but he's not. And I'm like, oh, come on, man. I'm telling you, you're not going to jail. Just keep your mouth shut. Nobody's going to jail. Okay, just be quiet. And they go, and they supposedly are going to go get this witness. And we're in the back, and he's like, I can't go to jail. And I'm like, you're not going to jail. If anything happens, I will take the heat. But if you just shut up, nothing will happen. So they come down, and they say, no, there's no witness. He won't come down. You guys are lucky or whatever. We know it was you and blah, 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 blah. And they go, all right, well, that's it, I guess. What do you want to do? And I said, I want to go to Taco Bell. And they're like, fine. And we went to Taco Bell, and we drove through the Taco Bell drive-thru.
The police drove you through it.
And I bought them tacos, but they took me through the Taco Bell drive-thru and then
just
took us home.
This is one day. So if anybody's watching this that maybe they're struggling with addiction, is there any advice you would give them or anything you could say to them?
Yeah, I mean, whatever it is. Well, first of all, however you feel about yourself as a person, all of us deserve a chance to be clean and happy. You deserve a life, and if you survive long enough to find it, it'll be so worth it. No matter what you've gone through, it's worth it. My life today is not roses. I'm no millionaire. There's a lot of people in recovery who have almost 20 years who have these great careers and 401ks. I still struggle from paycheck to paycheck. I've had a rough life, but I have all the potential in the world. I have a wife who loves me. I have a family who loves me. I have all these gifts that aren't monetary. I have peace of mind. I feel good about myself today. And it's only because I finally gave myself a chance to see if I was worth it. And I am. So give yourself a chance and you'll make it. And I know by saying that, that means...
Crying. I was just like, dude, I mean...
also, Mike's got that voice that's very...
it's very soothing.
Yeah, it's a Norman Rockwell.
I beat up a police officer and beat up people, but...
He wasn't a cop when I hit him. Oh. Okay, he was just some guy in a parking lot...
Off-duty.
Talking smack who invited a stranger to come fight.
Yes.
And he was like, yeah, I want to fight. I mean, maybe he thought he was a badass because he was a cop, but he wasn't a badass. And he was such a crybaby that instead of telling the people I talked smack and I got my lights punched out, he told them that we hit him with his car. And then the local cops in Wenatchee were like, if they hit you with the car, I found out 6 months later because I finally one day I was walking home and the cop that took me through the drive-thru, the cop that was trying to bust me, she picks me up one day and she's like, hey, hey Mike, and I was like, hey Officer Shaw, I knew who she was and everything, kind of hot for a cop, and she was like, look, I just want to know the story. I promise you I'll never tell anybody. There's no charges, no nothing. It's 6 months ago. I've just been waiting for an opportunity to see you. Tell me what happened. And I told her what happened. She's like, you're not going to believe it. This guy told us that she hit him with the car. We were like, how come all the damage is in your face? What were you doing? Like, were you on your knees?
He's very precise with his car. And he jumped the curb.
Yeah. He's like yelling at people, and this is no way to treat a fellow officer. And they're like, why you're like a drunk asshole. Like, you put yourself in this. We know that's not what happened. Why are you lying to us? And she was, when I told the story, she was so, I mean, I don't have a lot of interactions with black cops.
Right.
I gotta assume that a black guy talking to black cops who's not with another black, like you talking to two black cops is different from me talking to two black cops.
Yeah.
And these are all white. All my interactions with cops are all white cops.
Yeah.
Because this is in like Wenatchee. In Hawaii, they're Hawaiian cops and scared the crap out of me. I don't have the same safe interactions with cops in Hawaii or on Guam, but like in Washington. And here in LA, all my stuff, it's been white cops. So it's just one, I don't treat cops as any different from, but that's not to say that I have the same relationship with the police that you,
no.
I would never assume that you could have the same relationship with even a regular black, it's scary out there for black people. And that's a totally different podcast. Yeah. But I know that I'm lucky to be a white crackhead.
White crackhead.
Because if I was a
black guy,
if I was a black crackhead,
yeah.
If I was a black crackhead trying to take crack through the Hawaiian airport, I'd be in Hawaii right now doing 20 years.
Absolutely. Yeah. You smoked crack in public.
But instead you got to fly the plane. You got to
They're like, hey, come up here.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Is that crack? Hey, bring that guy up here. Kevin, you wouldn't be able to go, I'm surfer. Yeah, right. Get your black ass in the car.
It's not going to be the same thing. That's all the questions I have. I think that's all for Jay. Is there anything you want to push before we, or anything you want people to know?
Social media.
Well, that last question you asked me about give yourself a chance and all that, I wish that was enough. But the pool of drugs and the draw and being an addict, I know it's life and death. And a lot of us don't make it.
Right.
So for the last thing I would hope people would remember from this podcast is that if you're affected by somebody who's affected by drugs, love them. No matter what's going on, just love them. Now, that's not to say put yourself in danger.
Right.
Keep yourself safe. Protect yourself because that will help them. If you can love somebody and give them all the emotional support that you can afford to give them without giving them an opportunity to rip you off and causing this resentments and stuff like that, that love may save them. And it may not. You might love somebody and then they die.
Yeah.
But just know that loving them will never, ever, ever hurt them.
You're 2 for 2 with the straight to cameras, man. He is just like, and thank you, Good America.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for watching Ask a Crackhead with Mike Cummings. I've been Kev on stage. He's been Big Irish Shay.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.